different building projects, different things we have going on. We've been talking about building one way or another. So this week we're going to talk by continuing to talk about construction. We're talking about what it means to be under construction. And most of you probably know I'm not a builder. I like building things, I like understanding things, I like understanding how things work. I always had a passion for figuring things out and learning how they worked. When I was a teenager, I had this crazy idea I wanted to be an architect. I learned very quickly it involved a lot of math, so I never became an architect. But maybe it was because I grew up playing with Legos. Like, Legos were the best. Unless you stepped on them, they were the best. Because you could build just about anything with them. I loved playing with Legos. They had kits for Spider-Man, Batman, Star Wars, like just about anything you wanted to build. They were so cool. And even more than that, if you had a good imagination, you could build anything if you had the right piece. And I mean, you had to have the right piece. Like if I wanted to build a helicopter, I had to have helicopter propellers, or the blades. Right? If you didn't have that, though, you couldn't build a helicopter. And I think it's like that in life for all of us. We have these huge dreams, but if we're missing the right pieces, we give up completely, leaving our dreams and our projects half finished, just waiting for the right pieces. And that's what our gospel lesson is all about today, counting the cost. Knowing what something's going to cost you. And it's funny, I think about when I grew up, I always liked to build with Lego kits because I knew I always had what I needed. Right? If you've ever played with Legos, has anyone ever played with Legos? Okay, most of you guys. The cool thing about Legos is they come in this box. And then in tiny plastic bags that if you tore them wrong, the pieces would go everywhere. They would have them somewhat organized. So you have little rods, you have little square pieces, big square pieces, whatever, but they'd be organized. So you knew going into it, you had all the pieces. The instructions were there. They'd be in big pictures that would show you what you needed. And on the side of the list, in pictures, what you had. But now in today's world, as you grow up, we don't play with Legos anymore. Now we go on Amazon, Wayfair, Overstock, any of those online things, and we buy furniture. So me and Hannah, this past week or week and a half or so, we decided to buy a piece of furniture on Amazon. Now, we have this expectation being from Faison about 2-day Amazon shipping. I've been told that Faison is not 2-day shipping. It's a couple more days. So, the really cool thing is that it comes in, we open the box, and it's not little brick pieces like Legos. It's 12 million pieces for furniture. And they're not organized in little baggies. They're taped together and thrown in the box. And so me and Hannah, we've decided we're going to build this furniture. And me being a man, I just want to go right for it. Hannah says, no, let's lay everything out. Let's look at the instructions. And let's have a plan together. She wants to alphabetize it, numberize it, have it straightforward. And I'm like, let's just go for it. And she concedes, let's just go for it. So we start building it. We get through step 1. We're good to go. We got all the pieces. We're putting it together. And I don't know if you guys have built anything recently. It's not just nails and screws anymore. You have locking nuts. You have screws that actually aren't screws. They're also pegs that lock into other stuff. You have wooden dowels, you have glue, and you have everything. And it's not like Legos. You can't take it apart unless you have an axe and a hammer. Like, there's no taking it apart once you glue everything together and you screw it all together the way that it is now. It just doesn't go back together the same way. And so we're putting it together. We get through step 1, we're good. We get through step 2, we're good. We get to step 3, we're good. We look at step 4. And this is where the issue starts. It's not some small issue where it says the wrong screw. It's a big issue where the step 4 actually says step 7. And then we look on the next step and it says step 5. And the next step and it says step 6. And the next step and it says step 7 again. So we're missing step 4. See, the reality of all of this was we have the pictures, we have the instructions, but we didn't count the cost. We didn't know from the start of the project that step 4 was entirely missing because we didn't count the cost. We didn't look over the instructions. We didn't set everything out to make sure we had all of our screws. We didn't know what we needed. And see, the problem was I just wanted to jump into it and get it done. And we all want to do that. That's what Jesus was telling us. You need to stop. You need to focus. And look at the plans and map it out. Know what building this tower will cost you. It says in Luke 14:28-30, "For which of you intending to build a tower does not first sit down and estimate the cost, to see whether he has enough to complete it? Otherwise, when he has laid a foundation and is not able to finish, all who see it will begin to ridicule him, saying his fellow began to build and was not able to finish." We have to know what it's going to cost us before we commit to the project. Right? In the world today, something as simple as a house, we can estimate the cost, but the cost isn't necessarily known with how fast and different the market's changing. Right? We might expect that building a house could cost $100,000 one day, and the next $120,000, and the next is $200,000, because the market is constantly shifting. But Jesus is telling us to count the cost. To see, he's telling us to prepare, to study, to make sure we know what it's going to cost before we even begin. He's not talking about a house or a business or even building furniture, right? Which these verses would be helpful for too. But he's talking about the costs of following him. Just a few verses prior, Jesus is talking to a great crowd following him. And he wants to make sure that they all know what it really means to follow him. And he says this in verses 25-27. "Now a large crowd were traveling with him, and he turned and said to them, 'Whoever comes to me and does not hate father and mother, wife and children, brothers and sisters, yet even life itself, cannot be my disciple. Whoever does not carry the cross and follow me cannot be my disciple.'" Right? I think we all agree that Jesus' words there sound kind of harsh and kind of distant. Right? What does it really mean to follow Jesus if you have to hate your entire family and even your own life? If you have to hate your own family and even your own life, Jesus is defining for us what it means to be a disciple. Right? So I did a quick Google search, and I said, what does a disciple mean? How is that defined? The word disciple simply means learner or student. For us, being a disciple of Jesus means we are a student of Jesus. He is our teacher. We want to learn how to be like Jesus. The term we use to refer to our faith in Jesus is called Christians, literally meaning little Christs, or little anointed ones, if we want to be more specific. We want to follow him. We want to be like him. And it makes me think of the movie The Jungle Book. The animated one, it's a little bit older. But in that movie, Mowgli meets with the monkeys. And we hear the iconic song, "I Want to Be Like You." Right? It goes, "Ooby-Doo! I want to be like you!" I'm not going to sing the rest for you because you guys do not deserve that kind of pain. But the reality is, he says, "I want to be like you. I want to walk like you, talk like you too. You'll see it's true. An ape like me can learn to be human too." Right? So we ask, what does it take to be a disciple? Right? Jesus shows us in the verses beforehand that becoming a disciple is like an invitation to a great dinner feast. Right? For some of us, we have these excuses why we can't attend. I'm too busy. I got too much going on. I got to go to the store. I just got married. I have 3 kids. We have excuses of why we can't attend this dinner that Jesus invites us to. And that's Jesus' point. You have to take a look at what it costs to follow, to evaluate, to know that it likely won't look exactly like you expect. Jesus speaks boldly to the people when he says you must hate. Jesus is saying nothing can come between you and God. Even good things like family and the eternal instincts for survival. Right? You have to set those things aside and focus on God. If you set those things before God, you're treating them as idols, setting them before God. So what are the costs of following Jesus? The costs are called to follow. I think of the disciples, a lot of them, they got a very simple call. Follow me. And what do?
Follow him. Follow him.
You're more than welcome to feedback is awesome. What happens if Jesus comes up to them and he says, follow me? What happens? They follow. They follow. Right? So it's a simple call to follow. A call to take up your cross. A call to give up comfort. A call to give up whatever we hold on to most to follow him. And Jesus never promises that it'll be easy to follow him. If we're truly disciples and making the cry of our heart, I want to be like you, then we don't have to look any further than the life of Jesus itself. Right? What happens? He's hated. So we'll be hated for his name's sake. He suffered. So we'll have to suffer for his name's sake. We want to have a place to call our own. He was homeless. We'll be exiled. We'll be persecuted. And ultimately we'll have to carry our own crosses. But in John 10:10, Jesus says this. The thief comes only to steal, to kill, and destroy. And I claim that they may have life and have it abundant. Right? Jesus promises us life. We might face persecution. We might face struggles. But Jesus promises us life. And I'm not just talking about a regular life, but an abundant life filled with hope, love, and excitement. I think of the Apostle Paul who says he is rejoicing in his suffering for your sake to the church in Colossians because he's being empowered by the power of Christ. Or as it's written in 1 Peter 4:13, but rejoice insofar as you are sharing Christ's suffering, so that you may also be glad and shout for joy when his glory is revealed. When we're so focused on what's happening right in front of us, we miss what God's doing all around us. His glory is revealed through our trusting in him, through our following him, through our being a disciple. Being a disciple means that you don't stop following him. We imitate him. We learn from him. We grow closer to him. And I think of a marriage. And I'm going to be honest with you, I'm not giving you any marriage advice. I've been married for a little over a year and a half. So I have a lot to learn in marriage. But imagine this. You say you are married. You say you are happy. You identify as your spouse's wife or husband. But you don't spend any time with them. You don't study them. You don't even read the letters that they left you. Yes, you're married, but you don't know anything about them other than their name and maybe some cool stories about what they did. Does that really make a marriage? But for a lot of us, we do that with Jesus. We know that it's going to cost us something, but we're completely comfortable just saying, hey, Jesus, I like you. I'm totally a disciple, but I don't really have time to follow you. I have work. I have a family. I have hobbies that I need to focus on. And you know, Saturdays are for the guys. And Jesus, you have to understand that we want to go to church on Sunday, but Sunday's a great day to go to the beach. Jesus, I'm a good person, and when I'm older, I'll maybe have some more time. I'll pray more. I'll study my Bible a little bit more. I'll definitely begin to serve more. And we begin to wonder why we don't see what God's doing in our lives and the lives around us, and we miss the opportunities to serve him that are right in front of us. It's because we don't even really know who Jesus is. We have to count the costs. To recognize that Jesus says the cost to follow me is great. You have to set everything else aside. You have to fully commit. You have to give up everything to follow me. Jesus turns away people because of wealth. Turns people away waiting to say goodbye to their family. See, I've always heard it described this way. In our hearts, we have a throne. Right? It's a throne. Thrones are built for one. Right? There can only be one thing at the center of it all for us. It's not a love seat. It's not a sofa. It's not a couch. But we far too often believe our hearts are more than a throne. We believe we have God sit on this love seat along with money. God sit on this love seat with our favorite sports. God sit on this love seat with our team. Right? God sit on this love seat with our car. Whatever it is, we take God and we tell him that he's to sit on this love seat with something else. There's only one spot in our lives for God to rule and reign in our lives. Our lives cannot be controlled by God and. It has to be only him. We have to give him our all. Everything in our lives. And I don't think Jesus means you can't have a family, but instead you give him your family. I don't think Jesus is saying you can't have money, but he's saying give him your money. Jesus isn't saying you can't have control. He's saying give him control in your life. You can't worry about your health and safety, but instead give Jesus control of your life. Our call isn't to be fans of Jesus. Like, I know someone who is really into sports. And there might be some of you guys. You might be really into sports. Like you love basketball, or you love football, or you love baseball. But I know this guy, he can give you the stats on his favorite basketball team. Like he can tell you who's the best player, the worst player, and if he's going up against any other team, he can give you the statistics. Okay, they're this percent likely to win. He knows everything about them. But if I took him to a game and said, all right, you're in, he'd be like, what? I don't know how to play. Like, I can't play to that level. And it all comes down to the fact that he's a fan. He's fully committed to knowing everything about. But he's not a player. He's not on the team. And Jesus says, you can't be a fan of me. You have to be a follower. You have to be on the team. You have to be fully committed. Our relationship with Jesus, are we just fans? Or are we followers? Do we have knowledge of Jesus? Do we know all the stats? Are we on the team? Are we fully committed followers of Jesus? Are we disciples who are on fire, living into the little Christ mentality? Do we let Jesus reign in our lives, or are we trying to replace the throne of our hearts with a love seat? Our call is to follow Jesus, follow him daily, and to understand that call, we must deny ourselves and follow him. Right? I think of the invitation of Jesus to follow. It's free. I think that's the best part. The invitation is free. If you look at the verses that he wrote about in Luke 14 prior to his call to count the costs, he says he invited everyone. Right? All the nobles, the great people. And then what happened? None of them showed up. So they went out into the streets and invited more people. And the king said, is this everybody? And they said, yeah, well, he said, no. Go again and find more. The invitation was to everybody. And it was free. And see, we see that promise in John 3:16. For God so loved the world that he gave his only begotten Son, that whoever believes in him should not perish, but have everlasting life. Right? That's our hope. That's our hope. And that's what I call love. God loved us and the world so much that he gave his only begotten Son, that whoever believes is offered eternal life. That's a promise for us. That's love. All who believe and trust trust in him shall have eternal life. See, I think of it this way. Jesus is telling us to count the cost of following him, of being his disciples, but we're being welcomed with his arms wide open. And he's saying, come, follow me. God gave us the greatest sign of love by sending his son to die for us. And I say this, we're all under construction in one way or another. But if we allow Jesus to begin working in us, we stop just being fans of Jesus, and we let him reign supreme in our lives, and our lives will be transformed. There are costs to following Jesus, but if we give everything over to Jesus, our lives will be transformed. The Apostle Paul counted it all joy. He was in prison. He was beaten. He was stoned. Why did he count it all joy? Because he had been changed by the power of Jesus. If we're truly being followers and truly relying on God, our lives will be transformed. Today we finish, and I want to challenge you to stop being a fan and be part of the team. Right? To become a fully committed follower of Jesus, to take time this week to stop just making excuses, but to begin studying, to begin praying and listening for the voice of God. See, God loved the world so much that he gave us Jesus. That's love. God is reaching out, calling out, and he wants to be the Lord of your life. Do you accept the invitation? Right? Do you really commit to not just saying we're a follower of Jesus, but actively living it? Right? I believe that God is moving in this church. I believe that God is doing something here. But it starts with us fully committing to God and what he's doing. Knowing that it'll cost us something, but that the reward of being in a relationship with Jesus is greater than anything else. Amen. Let's pray. God, help us to count the cost. To know that you love us, as it says in John 3:16, that you love the world so much that you sent your only begotten Son. Help us to live that. Help us to want to be like you. To be fully committed followers of you. To not just be fans anymore, but to be followers. To know who you are. To love you. To study. To deeply commit our lives to you. God, help us to give all that we are to you. To serve. To love people. To count it all joy. To live that abundant life that you're calling us to. God, help us to throw out the love seat and replace it with the throne of our lives that you deserve. Help us to recognize all that you are, to listen for your voice in our lives. Amen. So as we close, I want to let you know that the altar is open.